going to start off with why music theory is important. If I were to stand up in front of you and do this, for instance, here's language I made up when I was in 4th grade. Mobble yobble, nobble mobbly, is sobble, hobble gobble gobble robble wobble dobble, hobble wobbly robbly yobbloo. You have no clue what I just said. It's called obble talk. And obble talk just basically means you add obble to a consonant and you leave the vowels alone. So hobble o wobble is H-O-W or how. So, but you didn't know that. You didn't know what I was saying. I said, my name is Mr. Garwood. How are you? What? If you knew what obble talk was, then you would be able to follow me. Well, music theory is like that. Music theory is the language of musicians. It's how we talk to each other. It's how guitar players talk to guitar players. It's how guitar players talk to saxophone players, piano players. There's a basic core set of language tools that we need to be able to talk to each other. Now, guitar players have their own little world that they live in, and they have special terms just for the guitar. Saxophones have just special little terms and things that they use to talk to other sax players, but there's still a core set of rules that all musicians need to know in order to be able to communicate with each other. That's what music theory is. So, having said that, let's dive into our first lesson. Music theory starts with a staff. This is a staff. A staff is 5 lines. On these 5 lines, we're going to be putting some notes. Sometimes it's called a stave, depending, I think in Europe they use that word, staff or a stave. Now, notes are going to be circles with stems or without stems. And you're going to place them on a staff. The note goes between the lines or on the line. Sometimes they'll have a staff or a stem, like that. And you're going to see things like whole notes, and we'll get into this later, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, and we'll cover all that later. But just know that there's a staff, and there's 5 lines, 4 spaces. Now, in order to be able to identify what the names of these notes are, we have to have a thing called a clef. Now, there's going to be 3 basic kinds of clefs. Treble clef, bass clef, and a C clef. Right now, we're just going to look at the treble clef. I will tell you that in your workbook, the way they tell you to draw a treble clef is a little clumsy for me. And I'm really hoping the publishers of that book don't hear what I just said, because they got it wrong. I'm just saying, they just did. But what do I know? I'm just from Paulding County. But I'm going to show you how to draw a treble clef. Go over here. I start off with a straight line. More or less a straight line. And then what I do, here, I'm going to draw that line over here, where it's a little bit easier to see. I'm going to draw basically a half of a circle or a half moon from the top line like that. Alright? Kind of like a little sliver of a moon. Then I'm going to start where I stopped here. I'm going to do the same thing. Make it a little bit bigger. Make a moon on the bottom one. And then I bring this around like this. And I circle it up over. So you end up almost like a little cross here, crossing the second line. Then I'll just put a little fishtail down here, and we're good to go. That's a treble clef. Now, another name for this clef is that this is called a G clef. And the reason is because this line where everything intersects, that's called a G. So now let's do the names of the notes of the treble clef. We have lines and spaces. The lines, this here, E, G, B, D, F. Every good boy does fine. That's what I learned in school. But there's some other ways of remembering if that's a little too tame for you. Elvis's guitar broke down Friday. That'll work. Even good boys drive fast. How about every good boy deserves fudge? Now, I had a young lady a teenage girl who just broke up with her boyfriend. She had some issues. She said, fat, dumb boys get everything. Whatever works. E, G, B, D, F. Now, the spaces spell the word face. So if you notice, line E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Every good boy deserves fudge and face. That's the treble clef. So if I would put a note here, what would the name of that note be? It would be a D. Absolutely right. If I were to put a note here, what's the name of that note? Well, it's on the first space, so that would be a F. All right, got that? Treble clef. Every good boy does fine. F-A-C-E, drawing the treble clef. Straight line, half a moon across the top, 2 lines, half a moon down there, bring it up around, circle it, put your little fishtail. Treble clef. Now, let's look at the bass clef. By the way, treble clef, do you think it's for the high notes or the low notes? Treble, high notes. If you're a piano player, it's the right hand. Bass clef is going to be your left hand, or your low pitch notes. Bass clef, bass notes, low notes. Here's what a bass clef looks like. A bass clef kind of looks like a kind of warped, frowny face. It's called an F clef because these 2 dots frame the line that's known as the F line. That's where the note F is on a bass clef. But also, long time ago in calligraphy, a calligraphy F, a fancy F, kind of looked like that, and this kind of evolved from that. So if this is an F, here's the lines and spaces of a bass clef staff. There's the lines. G, B, D, F, A. Good boys deserve fudge always. Girls buy designer fashion always. And the spaces. All cars eat gas. All cows eat grass. A-C-E-G. So if I wrote a note here, that's a B because it's on the B line. If I wrote a note here, that becomes a G because it's on the G space. So we clear? Bass clef staff. Start at the top, make a curve, make it like a crooked little frowny face, and just put dots on either side like that. All right, that takes us through the staff, the treble clef, the notes on the treble clef, the bass clef, and the notes on the bass clef.